picked the Eagles to beat the Vikings, which they did. So I picked the Patriots-Eagles Super Bowl. But I don't believe one bit that the Eagles should be a 5.5-point underdog. I don't believe that for 1 second, because I think as a complete team, they're better than New England. The difference, the outlier here, is Foles and Brady. That's where you're getting your point differential. That's where that 5.5 is coming from. But when you look at it for Foles, except for that game Christmas night, that's his only bad game. That game he played Christmas night was an ugly game. But that just goes to show you what having a complete team can do for a quarterback. Jacksonville has shown that with Bortles this season. You have a solid team around a quarterback, you can take a mediocre quarterback to the Super Bowl and win it. I mean, we've seen that plenty of times. We've seen it with Brad Johnson with the Buccaneers. We've seen it with Trent Dilfer in the Ravens in the early 2000s. Joe Flacco with the Ravens in the late 2000s. But that's what truly, and I do believe that in this Super Bowl, you don't have no outlier here. You don't have no random team. These are the two best teams. But when you look at personnel, I think the Eagles have the edge. They have the edge in the running game, and they have the edge on defense. And that is what wins you Super Bowls. And granted, this Eagles team, we know the Eagles as a franchise, they've been here before. They've been to the Super Bowl twice. They've lost both times. Their last loss came in 2004 against the Patriots. But here you have a Patriots team with a lot of players that have been to and won a Super Bowl. They just did it last year. And then you have an Eagles team who, as far as I know, I'll have to check on this, but as far as I know, they only have 2 players on their team that have played in a Super Bowl. And that's LeGarrette Blount and Chris Long. There's 2 players that were with New England last year. And you would think that would factor in here. Here's the Eagles with Chris Long and LeGarrette Blount, who were 2 key guys for them when they won the Super Bowl last year. Now they're with the team that they're going against in Philly. Don't think for 1 second that those guys aren't going to say, hey, look, this is what they like to do. This is how they're going to attack us. Jacksonville had a great game plan against New England. They just didn't execute it in the second half. And New England made the better adjustments. But when you look at team as a whole, I think you got to give Philly the edge. The overall edge. I think New England has the better offensive line, definitely has the better quarterback, and in my opinion has the better receivers. But when you look at key things that wins you Super Bowls, Philly has that. They have 2 stud running backs in Ajayi and LeGarrette Blount. They have a stud offensive line. That is a big part of why Foles is playing the way that he is. And then you have a defense that is playing exceptionally well. Now, granted, this is New England, and they are the king of making adjustments and taking your best weapons away. And obviously, you've got to know the game plan for New England is going to be make Foles put this game on Foles' shoulder. And if they can do that early, it could be a long night for Philly. But we're going to get into all that in just a second, as we'll have 2 full weeks to prepare for Patriots versus Eagles. And you even have people talking about, well, what does this mean for Carson Wentz? Again, having a complete team, and give Doug Peterson the credit for what he's done there. And look, that's where it comes down to franchises and organizational control. Here you have the Browns and, some other teams that have just whiffed on head coach after head coach and personnel after personnel. And here you have the Eagles that make the move to Doug Peterson. People criticize them heavily for that hire. And look at what it's done. He's brought them to the Super Bowl. Something that a lot of people thought Philly may never get back to. Doug Peterson has done that. But with the whole Carson Wentz thing, look, the MVP argument for him is gone. Not just because of the injury, but because of where his team is. You can't sit there and say that the guy's the MVP of the league when the team is playing for the Super Bowl and he hasn't played in 6-8 weeks. That argument is gone. Do I think Philly this season made Carson Wentz better than what he really is? A little bit. But on the flip side of that, Carson Wentz looks like he's a franchise guy. But obviously, this is what it shows what a team and a unit does for a good quarterback. Foles is putting up numbers, like I said, except for that Christmas night game, which is the only outlier here. You look at Foles' numbers. They're almost identical to when Carson Wentz was in there. Not trying to take anything away from Carson Wentz here, but the whole MVP argument is gone. Here you have a team that didn't just lose Carson Wentz, but lost their head offensive tackle, lost their left tackle, and they're playing in the Super Bowl. And what do you do if you're Philly? What if Foles wins this? I mean, he's already gotten you here. What if Foles wins you this Super Bowl? You've already got Carson Wentz labeled and acknowledged as your franchise guy. What do you do with Foles? It's kind of like with Jags and Bortles. Bortles helped take that team to the AFC Championship. And if it wasn't for some questionable play calling and some tired defense and another great performance by Tom Brady, they would be playing in the Super Bowl. But that's what structure and having the right team can do for a quarterback. When Foles was under Chip Kelly, except for that one season in Philly, the numbers were terrible. Then when he got moved to the Rams with Jeff Fisher, the numbers got even worse. And people said, oh, this guy is done. And then when Carson Wentz went down for Philly and Nick Foles had to take over, the majority of people believed this team is done. They're done. They'll be gone first round of the playoffs. And now they're going to the Super Bowl. And it's because of the team there. If you have the right people in place, you can have a Nick Foles quarterback and play for a Super Bowl. And this is a team that's very capable of winning it. And obviously the main thing for them is going to be don't let New England control that game to where it forces the game to be put on Foles' back. Because that's what New England is going to try to do. That's what they did to Bortles and the Jaguars late in that game. That's what they're going to try to do to Foles and Philly. They're going to try to make them have to use them. That's what they're going to do. They're going to try to make them have to say, we got to have Foles win this game. And that's the outlier here. That's why they're 5.5 point underdogs. That's why they're the lowest underdog team since the 2009 Cardinals against the Steelers. Because of that factor, the Brady-Foles factor. And you gotta wonder, how does Carson Wentz feel? You know, in only his second season as a full-time starter, he was putting up MVP numbers, gets injured, and now you have your backup who comes in and puts up almost identical numbers to you and is taking your team to the Super Bowl. How do you think he feels? Part of him has to be sitting there thinking, man, what if they go with him? And that would be a hard pill to swallow. I mean, if they win and Foles is crowned a Super Bowl winning quarterback, either you're going to trade him and get a lot for him, or you're going to have a QB battle next season. That's the bottom line here. But this is, again, where you got to be careful with the whole MVP talk. Everybody wanted to crown Carson Wentz before he got injured. And here you have Foles putting up identical numbers, literally identical numbers to him. Kind of hurts that argument. Other breaking news, some NBA news. The Milwaukee Bucks have fired Jason Kidd. They're 23-22. He's been there since 2014. I kind of, some people are acting like it's a shock. I don't think that it should really be a shock. Yeah, I know he helped take them back to the playoffs and blah, 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 blah. But there's issues there. And going back to last season, there was talk of a split, a disagreement between Jason Kidd and the front office of the Milwaukee Bucks of how the team should be handled and what they should do going forward. Well, now he's gone. He's fired. And what I love is people are already making the rumor of, Tyronn Lue's job in Cleveland is in question right now with how terrible they're playing. Jason Kidd, one of the things that he did with Milwaukee is he helped that defense out extremely. And that is what Cleveland needs right now. So there's already murmurs, there's already talk of, will Cleveland fire Tyronn Lue to try to go get Jason Kidd? Take a music break, come back, we'll talk the NFL. You're listening to Hardy Show. Sports Talk Speaker Radio, iHeartRadio.com.
The headlights, I'm a mama's boy, I'm a fist fight, kinda county line, kinda cold beer, little hat down, little John Deere, I kinda give it down, I kinda